As I think back on my time as host of Greater Boston, there are certain people who stand out, people we came to rely on for unique perspectives on the issues we tackle here. And so before I step down from this post, we're inviting back a select few who helped elevate the show over the years. We're calling it the Greater Boston version of my weekly radio segment, Emily's List. My guest tonight is known for her keen insights on entrepreneurships and branding. She's a professor at the Harvard Business School who also happens to be an accomplished equestrian and master of her own universe, which you can read all about on her blog. And we're taking credit, by the way, for launching her substantial media career, too. The one and only Nancy Koehn is here. Welcome, Nancy.
Well, thank you so much, Emily. It's great to be here.
You know, I can remember when we first met you, and I think it was like 2008, and I thought you came on, you look like she's brainy, she's zany, she's bold, she's not afraid to speak her mind. And I started thinking, back when you got into economy, business, there were very few people, women I should say, who were taking that on. What gave you the courage to do that?
You know, a set of circumstances, really. I ended up at the Harvard Business School, a place I never expected to, again, through twists and turns in the road. And I just thought to myself, this is a challenge. You could learn a lot about business. You could wear dresses and, you know, have some femininity about you and, you know, deal in that world of very intelligent silverback gorillas and go for it. And I just kept saying that to myself as I climbed the tenure ladder and very, very blessedly, you know, learned a lot about business, about organizations, about entrepreneurs, about egos, about the way that companies and collectives unfold as organic entities, but also a great deal about the larger stage. You know, my PhD is in history, and
yeah, you're a historian.
And I spend half of my day in the past and half of my day in the present, you know, informing kind of both aspects of my life with the other. So I use the past to help me understand what in the heck's going on right now, and I apply what I'm learning right now to the way I think about people and events that happened long ago. And, you know, on a good day, I feel like I'm the luckiest person alive. And the fact that I'm a woman in a man's world is, well, that's just ducky, as an old editor of mine would say.
Something I've never asked you about in person, we've talked about it off air because it didn't seem relevant, but it's going to seem relevant today, is your equestrianism. And I remember you telling me how you got into it. And I hope you'd be willing to share that, because actually the reason we got talking about it that one day is because you had fallen off a horse and you were actually fairly severely injured. But how did you come to get so interested?
So I took up riding about 11 years ago. And it was because my larger life was falling apart. There had been a very unexpected divorce. There was the financial ruin that came with that. I had had cancer. I would get cancer again. I didn't know that at the time. And I got on a horse. My sister said, go get on a horse, Nancy. I'd never ridden before.
Really?
And I started with the 5-year-olds on the lead line with the ponies, and my heels were practically touching the ground. Yeah. And I graduated to the 8-year-olds, and then eventually I was riding with the 12-year-olds. And I was always athletic, but I just took to this with such passion. And I look back on it now, Emily, and I think I must have been searching for some kind of ballast, some kind of redemption in the midst of all these big dominoes that were falling around me. And I just poured all this energy and all this, you know, naivete. I thought I would master this sport. You don't master this sport. This sport is like life. You don't master it. You just will to go on and be better, you know, when you make mistakes. And I did it. And honestly, it saved me. It brought me great joy. And ironically, I never expected this, it taught me a great deal about leadership. The subject I've now, you know, spend an enormous amount of time thinking and writing and speaking about.
So I was looking at your blog today, and you have, by the way, this is wonderful. People don't, you go on the blog and you could take a tour. Is that your house?
It's not. It's the house I always wanted to have.
Okay, well, it's gorgeous, but there's this horse. You can click on certain things and hear more about Nancy. But one of the things, it just grabbed me. You said, what I know for sure. What do you know for sure?
I know for sure that goodness is all around us. I know for sure that animals and horses and the quiet among us in the chattering classes have a great deal to teach us. I know that we are all much stronger than we initially realize. We are much stronger. We have, you know, core muscles of courage and steel and decency in there, and we just are waiting, in some sense, for a circumstance to demand that. I know that buying clothes is a wonderful thing to do.
I agree with that.
I love buying clothes. I know that the poetry of everyday life is as rich as T.S. Eliot or Robert Frost or, William Shakespeare. I know that we are all better off when we can laugh at ourselves. And that's what horseback riding taught me. It taught me to forgive myself over and over every day, and it taught me to laugh at myself.
You mentioned poetry, because I also, reading your blog today, you enjoy it. You're a bit of a poetess yourself, but you've been memorizing poetry recently.
Yeah. I take my dogs for long walks. I live in Concord. I just moved to Concord this summer, and I wanted to be out in the country and closer to horses. And I take my dogs for long walks, and I've just been thinking about what shall I say as I walk among these woods, some of which, Henry David Thoreau strolled through a long time ago. I thought, I'll memorize poetry. I'll memorize a little bit of Shakespeare. I'll memorize a little bit of Robert Frost. I just memorized the Gettysburg Address because last week was the 151st anniversary of Lincoln giving that. I memorized just bits and pieces, T.S. Eliot, and it's, we used to have to do that in school.
I remember. I was thinking about it yesterday, the Rhyme of the Ancient Mariner. I had to memorize the whole, I don't know why I was thinking, maybe it's because I was reading your thing.
Ulysses, right? To strive and not to yield. All that. And we pull it up now, and we are just in a certain way like inspired, or, we push our shoulders back when we hear some beautiful, motivating language. And I find, as someone who speaks and writes it occasionally, I get to pull it up just extemporaneously or when I'm writing. I love it. And it's a great way to think about your time in nature. And
the dogs and the horses love it.
They
Nancy
do.
Koehn, it's been so much fun having you here.
It's been such a privilege and pleasure to be here, Emily.
Thanks.